Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. Got a little bit of a cold, and as I told my friend here, I'm just going to think that the cold's not coming, and then the power of positive thinking will get the cold away from me. So anyway, sorry if I sound a little raspy, but welcome back to another episode. Today, I have a good friend with me and someone I'm super excited to talk to. We work together. She's helping us as we're building Leader, which is the most amazing thing that's ever been built. Biased a little bit. She's a dog mom. She's a wonderful lady. There's a lot of stuff that I think we have in common that it will be cool to talk about. The mother of Chester herself, Robyn. Thank you for being here, Robyn. How are you?
Hi, Kyle. I'm so good. This is going to be really fun. I've been looking forward to this.
It's going to be a blast.
Having me.
And side note, if for anyone that doesn't know, which most of you probably don't, Chester is the best office dog in the world and may someday have a TV show. I'm just putting that out there.
We're trying. Just kidding.
Well, thanks for coming on, Robyn. I'm excited to talk. Like we were talking before, like if you could just let's just get going, like kind of give us like the origin story of like who you are, where you came from, what are you all about.
Yeah, well, my name is Robyn, as you said. I was born and raised for the most part in Seattle, and it was an amazing place to live and grow up. It's beautiful there. If you haven't had a chance to go in September. That's when it's the best. And we moved to California for a couple of years when I was a kid, and it was great. We never wore shoes. We were able to, play outside, and I've got 3 brothers, so there was always somebody to hang out with, which was great. I went to Bothell High School, which is a local high school in the Seattle area. I've had lots and lots of different jobs, which kind of have all weaved into where I am now, which is really fun to kind of look back and see how each of those steps kind of gave me the skill needed to kind of be where I am right now. So I am a dog mom. Chester's my dog. He's the best. He's sitting next to me here. I'm just excited to be here and excited to kind of dig into some things together.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I love Chester. He's the best. So as you said that, and I'm so curious because I don't know all of the jobs that you've had, and kind of as you say that, like it even interests me more of like what are some of the jobs that you've had, and maybe if you can dig into like, I had this job and this is what I learned from it. Can you give us a couple things? I know you've had several.
Yeah, I've had several, which when you say that, you're like, oh my gosh, could she not just decide? But
that was not what I was thinking.
I know, but looking back, it's just been so fun to see how little skills from the different areas. So I worked in a restaurant for 2.5 years when that was my first job, and then I worked at a bridal salon where I sold dresses. And if you ever heard of the story of Mary Kay Letourneau, I sold her wedding dress, which was very interesting.
Who is that? Can you say who that is?
So she kind of a scandal, but she was involved with one of her students. I'll just say that. So if you want to look that up, you can. But she was a very, very interesting gal. And then, gosh, I managed a band for a little bit, which was really fun. So it was a band. It was called Timothy James Meany. He's a local Christian artist, mostly to the Seattle area, but I was able to kind of work behind the scenes and, set up the merch table and kind of connect with the people that listened to him and, arranged events and concerts and stuff like that, which was
That's
really
sweet.
fun. He was so kind and just really fun to be involved with that. Let's see. I also went to hair school, so I'm a hairdresser as well. I have been since 2015. And so that was probably the role that I got the most from, that I can see how it goes into my role now at Leader. So I was a national educator for Paul Mitchell, where I got the chance to go travel the country and go to other Paul Mitchell schools and teach the teachers how to teach better, if that makes sense. So I was able to really dig into things like culture and caring for your team well and taking care of our students. And the key demographic that we had for the students that went to hair school was like around 18 to 22. And that's a pretty pivotal time. And it was really incredible to teach these teachers how to care for those students in that way when they're in that age range. And so, it was so fun. And I learned how to speak in public and have difficult conversations and really dig into, what makes a culture what it needs to be successful. And so I did that for, gosh, I don't even know how long, a long time. I don't even know how many years, but a long time. And it was really fun. And then I worked for a school district after that. I was a nanny after that. I worked for a company called PushPay, which is a digital giving software company.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Just kidding.
We joke about that a lot. But worked for PushPay, and that kind of lead me into this leader role. So yeah, it's if I wouldn't have taught, I wouldn't be able to be in the position I am now. If I wouldn't have learned kind of, having different kinds of conversations and kind of building that skill level up, it would lead me to where I am now. So yeah, it's been super fun.
It's always, do you ever think about this? I think about this a lot because I've had some different career paths too, but it's always interesting, as you kind of alluded to that, to look back and see how everything kind of interweaves into where you're at. It's like nothing was for naught. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah. So really a little more clear path of how I got to leader. So I left Paul Mitchell. It was it was a giant step, because it was one of those situations where God says, hey, I really want you to do that. And I'm like, I'm good. Thanks for asking. Like, I'm good.
Yep.
And then he asks again, and you're like, nope, actually I'm doing really good, but thanks for checking in. And then he really you have to, he makes it happen. And so as difficult as it is to kind of be forced out of something, like you said, it all led to here. So I left Paul Mitchell, moved back home to Seattle. I needed a job. So I got a job with a school district that I was local to. My aunt worked for them. And so I was able to be a teacher's assistant. And most of my time spent was with special needs kids, which was so amazing and really fun. And man, I met the most amazing kids. And then from there, the school year was over, and I was at church, and I was chatting with my pastor's wife about, what do I do next? Like, what's there for me to do? And she said, oh, you should be a nanny. And I thought, do they even have those? Like, is that a real thing? She's like, oh yes, in Seattle. Oh yeah. So she connected me with a gal that runs her own nanny agency, went through the process. The next day she called and said, hey, I've got this great family. They've got 2 kids, one of which has some special needs. So they saw your experience and would love to chat with you. And I did. I was able to be a part of that family. Worked for them for a while, loved it, loved the kids. And then some just adjustments in their family changed. And so I could choose to either find a new family to nanny for, or work for PushPay, because that there was a direct connection into PushPay. And so I thought, I've never really worked in a big corporate experience, and if he thinks I can do it, I'm going to do it. So I was able to be the front desk at PushPay and loved it, and just was able to do so many fun things just to care for the team. That was a lot of my job, was to make sure everybody was doing well. And then from there, as you've shared in your previous podcast, one of the owners of PushPay created Leader, and then I was able to come to Leader. So if I hadn't done like those many, many, many different steps in between, and just was faithful in keep moving forward, and there was some of that I was like, are you sure you want me to do that, God? And he did. And now to look back and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these steps that led me to where I am now. And I'm so grateful for where I am now, that it's been really fun.
I love it. It's so cool. Like, even as you say that, and like I said, when I think about my own life, it's so cool. Because in the moment, that's the thing about life. Like, in the moment, you don't always know how what you're doing in the moment is going to play out in the future. And it can be really unnerving sometimes. Like you said, like, are you sure this is what I'm supposed to do? Like, and maybe part of my story, and some people know, like, I had a career in restaurants, and then I took a whole step back and was waiting tables, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I knew that's what I was supposed to be doing, but I had no clue why. And that role ended up teaching me a lot, but then leading me to meeting Jordan, that led me to meeting Jeremy, that led me to here. So it's just like, you don't always know what faithfulness is going to play out in the future, but it's you have to trust. I guess that's the big point I'm trying to make there, is trust.
Absolutely. And I remember when I was interviewing for the nanny spot, and I was like, I don't know if nanny's for me. But I don't like hear God's voice audibly like some people can, but I just really felt like God was saying, I need you to do this. And I really heard that word need. I was like, okay, I'll do it. Let's go. And man, I'm so glad I did. And it's just been, I always kind of come back to that, where God always has had my back. from the get. And I obeyed, and he, with what he asked me to do. And man, I literally wouldn't be here in this city, in this job. I probably wouldn't even have Chester, to be honest, because so many things would have had to go, would have gone in a completely different way. So just to see how God's taking care of me so well, even when you're frustrated or not being able to see the end of the road, because there was a point where I didn't see the end of the road, and to be able to look back, and man, it's been really, really sweet.
I love it. Now, to ask you more of like maybe this is like a high level question, but like,
sure,
you're a person that's very much, and we all have different gifts, but you have very much a gift of like love and care and encouragement.
Thank you.
And that's something that even in those roles, that gifting is very specific to like a teaching role, to a nannying role. Like those are all like caring roles, right? Those are, you have to have a heart for people to do those things. Where do you think, again, this may be a high level question, where do you think that came from? Like, was it something you were raised? Was that a moral that you were raised with? Or can you identify a point where you're like, man, I really love people? Or like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it comes from my mom, to be honest. We're almost the same person. We're very much alike. As much as I pushed against it, like in high school, where you're trying to like be your own person, but now we have the same laugh, and we just have kind of the same way of approaching things. And so I think a lot of it came from that. I think a lot of it comes from just my, experiences through life, where growing up, like in high school, I had a really great group of friends, and they cared for me well, and vice versa. I think in the different jobs that I've had, I've always met people that I was able to connect with in some way. And then I think you're right. When you go into teaching, it has to be selfless. Like it can't be about you. It can't be about how good you are or how talented you are as a teacher. It has to be, how are your students connecting with what you're saying? And if they're not connecting, it's not their fault, it's your fault for not presenting it in a way that you're connecting with them. And so I think I learned the most from that experience, because I taught students for, gosh, how many years did I teach students? Probably at least 3 years before I started traveling. And the whole goal is for them to graduate. And if they're not having a good time, or not seeing seeing how things are working and seeing success, they're not going to be successful later on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I've grown up in the church as well. And right. That is a giant piece as well, where you are, almost always surrounded by people that care really well. And that's what I've always been kind of drawn to, is caring for people and finding the people that do the same. You become who you surround yourself by, So, So being around people that care for each other well is always kind of what I've been gravitated towards. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
totally. And it's so interesting you say that, because I've always said that and about myself, and I've told my mother this, and I was talking to somebody the other day, I can't remember, somebody at work, I think, about how I really got a lot of my hard skills of work ethic and determination and ambition and all these things from my father. But my mother is the one and instilled all those soft skills in me. I can clearly think back to many just instances and time periods and things she used to say, even of like, love is kind and love is caring, and like all these things she would tell me as a kid. So all those things came from my mother. Not that my dad's not kind; he's amazing.
All right, oh gosh, me too. Yeah, me too.
But it's interesting. Awesome. I can't remember. Oh, it was Sky.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about the role of mothers and fathers and husbands and wives, and just the male and female roles, and how men have more of a gifting in certain areas, and women have more of a gifting in certain areas, and more like the EQ areas. So it's interesting you say that, because I think that's a lot of people's experience.
I think so too. And depending on how you grow up, what's so funny is today my parents are going out to dinner because it's their 50th anniversary of their first date. My dad figured out today. So yeah. So
tell them congrats.
Thanks. Their 50th wedding anniversary is later this summer, but it's just
so cool.
So they've been together and going strong. And so everybody's, growing up life is of course a little bit different, but my parents are great, and they've always been, a real staple in my life. But I think you're right with like my dad has taught me so many things that are so practical and so necessary. And I can't even come up with an example, but there's so many that he's taught me that have been so so helpful and ways of looking at things in different ways, and advice that he's given and in ways that he's kind of directed, how I've been moving forward. And then my mom does have that kind of emotional side where she was able to show me how to care for each other well and how to have fun. And we had a really great growing up and did so many fun, crazy things all together as a family. And so yeah, not to discredit, anybody else that, I grew up with, but my mom and I are definitely a lot alike.
That's excellent. Well, that's such a special relationship to have too. Like I love my mother. And there was times, like you said, where I pushed back and I wasn't probably the best, but hey, you know what?
Yeah.
We're here. Shout out to our mothers. Our mothers are wonderful.
I know. I'm glad she lets me come around still. It's good.
Yeah. Well, I've met her. She's a sweetheart. She comes around here. You let her come around at this point.
I know. Right? I know. It's so fun. Yeah. Well, they're fun.
I want to not to get too heavy, but I want this to be valuable to people. You and I have both been through. Everybody's been through different struggles in their life, right? People have been through pain and tough times and things. And we kind of have our own stories, right? People listen to my old journey with addiction and my craziness. And sometimes you create your own pain, but sometimes you don't create your own pain. It's just a struggle that is placed on you and you have to endure. And you're going to go as deep or as much as you want. I don't want you to feel
but nothing's off the table.
Okay, then great. I want to hear a little bit about like some of the, because you've faced some intense struggles and had to overcome a lot and still do. Talk a little bit about that and kind of just that journey.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. So I have a illness called endometriosis, which is a illness that affects 1 in 10 women. And it takes a really long time to get diagnosed. It takes a really long time for a doctor to really listen and hear you and actually take action. And so I've had it since I was 14. I'll be 44 this year. So 30 years I've had this, and we've tried everything on the planet to try to get it to be resolved. So what it does is it causes chronic pain internally. And so the best way I can describe it is you have, if you have barbed wire wrapped around all of your organs on the inside, that's what it feels like. So,
Lord.
Yeah, so it's kind of intense. And so I've tried everything. We've tried different hormonal medications. We've tried, different surgeries. We've tried everything that you can really think of. And kind of like I said at the beginning, it takes so long to get diagnosed correctly, and you can only get diagnosed surgically. There's no scan or anything that you can do to see it except for through surgery. So I had my first surgery when I was 19, where they go in and let me back up. Let me explain kind of how, in case you've never heard of it before. Basically, it's the tissue that's supposed to be on the inside of your uterus comes on the outside, and it's not supposed to be on the outside. And so what it does is it attaches to other organs that are surrounding that area. And then every month when you cycle it, that tissue, swells and does what it needs to do if it was going to be carrying a child, and it's not. And so it just causes almost blisters on your organs. And so, and it just, it's cyclical. And so every time you get that hormone surge, it inflames it. So we tried the first surgery. They went in and tried to burn off those spots to try to prevent it. Back then, we didn't know that actually it's not effective. It actually makes it worse. So we did that first one, tried some other medications. I went through medically induced menopause twice, which was real fun. Oh, we did that. It was terrible. Lord. It was terrible. And then we tried another injection, and I was on that for 6 years. And then I found out at the end I was only supposed to be on it for 2 years. So we're having to watch bone density for that. So that's really fun. And then I had my second surgery in, 2013. And this was a situation where I knew the surgery wasn't going to be effective. It was proven that it wasn't, but the doctor that I had, she said, well, I'm not going to continue your medication unless you do this so I can prove that you have it. So I did that, did it again, went back for my follow-up to continue my medication. She said, no, I've changed my mind. We're not going to let you have that. So that was really fun. So you get things like that where you're just not believed. So anyway, so that was the second one. And then from there, I was living in actually Dallas at the time. I had lived here for a year. I moved back to Seattle. And this whole time I hadn't met anybody else that had what I had. So it's very isolating. I never told anybody I was struggling. I really kept it internal, and because it was so hard. It's hard to get people to relate when you have an illness that's invisible. So I don't have like a broken arm and a cast. I don't have crutches. I don't have a physical way of showing you what is going on. And so I didn't really know anybody else that had it, and didn't know to the extent that women suffer from this illness. So went home to Seattle, just had this passing thought of, I wonder if there's people on Facebook that have this same thing. And so I found these Facebook groups with thousands and thousands and thousands of women in them. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't by myself with going through this illness, because I found all these other women that had the exact same thing that I was going through. And as much as I hate seeing other people have this, it was so encouraging to know that I wasn't alone, which is a huge thing to feel, and it was from that support group that I was able to find this other surgeon. And this was another kind of really clear path of how God really worked out something incredible. So I found this Facebook group. I heard about this surgeon. She was 1 in 7 in the country that could do this specific kind of surgery that actually takes the disease tissue out of your body instead of just burning it on the surface. And she was in the Seattle area. And at the time I was working for the school district, I was getting paid so little money. Shout out to teachers, man, because I was getting paid so little money that I was able to be on state insurance for the time that I was with the school district. So I had this insurance. I met with this surgeon. I was able to get an appointment. She had just approved to go through the insurance that I currently had with the state. And it was incredible, because this surgery was I think it was like $100,000 surgery. It was so complicated and expensive and insane. And I know. So, so when they said, "Oh yeah, your insurance has approved it, we can move forward," I was like, "Okay, great, this is awesome." So that was the biggest surgery. So that was that was in 2017. So this month will be 5 years. And we did a hysterectomy plus the excision of the endometriosis. And so we did that surgery. I knew in my head, anytime you go to the doctor and you get something done, you pay, they pay a percentage and you pay a percentage. I've never gotten it 100% covered, right? So like a week and a half goes by and I'm still recovering. It was about an 8-week recovery. I was on bed rest for about 8 weeks. And I called them and I said, "So I know that my insurance was approved, but how much is my side of it?" And they said, "Oh no, you're covered. It's been approved." And I said, "No, I know I've been approved, but what's the amount I need to pay? How long am I going to be in debt for?" And they go, no, you don't understand. It's 100% approved. You will never see a bill for any of it. It's covered. Yeah. And so I about fell over because I didn't understand that that's how insurance worked in that regard of being on state insurance. And the whole thing was covered. Yeah. Goodness. And if I would have not had that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, who can do that? I wouldn't have been able to afford it. So that was the last big one. Like I said, I had 8 weeks of bed rest. It was pretty intense. I had quite a few complications from it. Got healed up, was pain-free for like 3 months, and then the pain came back. And I was not thrilled, but so then that was another 6 months of trying to figure out why it was back. And we figured out that I have gotten an infection from the catheter that I had in and didn't know it. And so the infection was just like growing and growing and growing to where by the time they found it, it was really pretty bad and scary. So I was able to get rid of that. As soon as that infection was fixed, I was good to go. So I had about a year and a half of being pain-free, which was very weird because, I'm so used to like any little twinge and I'm like, "Oh, okay, now we're back in pain." And so it almost was like I couldn't quite enjoy it fully because I was just waiting for the shoe to drop. And being in pain for so long, I didn't know any different. I didn't know how to live pain-free. I didn't know how to just jump in the car and go somewhere and not have my medication with me just in case. And so it took a long time with some therapy, to be honest, to be able to kind of process how to live and how to feel all these emotions that I haven't been able to feel for so long because I was on a lot of medication for a pretty consistent amount of time. And that can prevent you from having normal emotion. Sure. And so yeah, so it had about a year and a half, and then it started to sneak its way back. And now we're back probably. I would say my pain is probably 70% back from what it was before my surgery. So not a great percentage, but I've got a great doctor here that I found, and we're trying different things to try to see if we can get that percentage down a little bit. We've tried 3 nerve blocks, which is where they go in and put anesthetic in your spine to try to make it so that your brain doesn't recognize the pain. It's not that you're not in pain, but your brain doesn't like recognize it. I don't know exactly. I'm not a doctor, but they haven't worked. So I'm just pain managing, and here we are. That's a really long answer, but
goodness, thanks for sharing that. That's you've been through a lot. That's such it's a tough thing to go through, especially being to the point where, like you said, where you're like, man, I'm still dealing with it. Like it didn't get fixed. That's tough. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was, I go back and forth a little bit, because I remember before my big surgery 5 years ago, I was talking to my pastor and at the time, and we were talking about healing, and asking for healing for this just wasn't something that crossed my mind, to be honest, because it's so big. Like I thought, how in the world can God heal this? Like there's no cure for it. There's there's very little money and research that goes into it. Like, I know he's pretty good. I mean, I know God's pretty amazing, but that's kind of a lot asking for that, is what I had in my head. And so I started praying for it. And so when I was able to be pain-free for a year and a half, it was like, okay, God hears me. This is amazing. And then to have the pain back was kind of tough for me to reconcile with. And I had to really work on, this isn't God like being mad at me or showing me, that I'm not allowed to live pain-free. It's nothing like that. But it took a while to kind of come to terms with that, because I thought, okay, well, that's, and I was frustrated. I was pretty frustrated because I thought, man, I finally had this life of being pain-free, and now I've got to be back into this again. But every day is a little different for sure, but I still see God's sweetness in the everyday. I still see him, protecting me and providing for me. And there's going to be a reason, and I'll figure out what it is. It may not be, may not be next week or next month or next year even, but I know that there's a why behind it. And in the meantime, it's just really great to be able to have friends that know that I struggle with as well, because I didn't tell hardly anybody that that's what was going. No, I hardly told anybody, because I didn't want, and I don't know if you've struggled with this too, but I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. Yeah. There's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. And I felt like, it feels comforting for somebody to empathize with you, but you just feel dumb when somebody feels sorry for you. Like, I don't want anybody, I can do this. This is, this is all I've known. I know how to deal with it. But to have somebody feel sorry for me is just, well, I don't like it. So I just stopped sharing. I just didn't tell anyone. And so now I've, especially in the last couple of years, I've been a lot more open with people that I trust of, hey, I'm dealing with this and I struggle with this, and it doesn't make me less of a person. It doesn't make me, not be able to do my job well, or care for my dog well, or care for my friends well, but I do have this going on. And it's been really cool to see how people have been so kind towards me, and much opposite of what I had in my head of how that response would be when I would share that with people. So that's been really cool to not feel so isolated with just struggling with it by myself,
Oh, isolation is the worst thing that could happen to you. I don't know if there's anything worse. Because you just sit in it, right? You just sit in it and you continue to stew on like how bad things are, and things continue to snowball. Like everything's it's that idea that energy is always moving, right? In one way, in one direction or the other. So nothing is stagnant, even your emotions and in life. So if you're, and I've put myself in isolation before, it's terrible, right? But I just continue to move in that direction of like negativity and everything is against me and things. And there's real reasons why, but you have to be able to change that momentum and go, okay, I'm not going to just stay here. So I'm curious, because man, you've had to overcome a lot and you're still dealing with it, where like, I see a lot of people that have had struggles in their life, but most of them can say there was a period of time when this happened and that's behind me. And you can't say that because you're still dealing
Mm-hmm.
with it. And you
Yeah.
said something very interesting. You were like, I know there's a why, I know there's a reason. And basically that's a perspective thing right there. You have
Mm-hmm.
a good perspective.
Thank
How the
you.
heck do you have a good perspective? That's the question.
You're so kind. Um, God's just been really good in helping to put the right people in my life and the right kind of situations and circumstances in my life.
Mhm.
That's all that I, yeah, I don't exactly know. God's just been really
Huh.
good because I should be a puddle on the floor,
Yeah,
if it was
totally.
in a regular situation. And I have had moments of wanting to be on a puddle on the floor or literally being on the floor. One of the things I've done is I have a tattoo on my wrist that says lift your eyes. And I put that
Hmm.
on my wrist after my last surgery, because there are times where I'm physically on the bathroom floor. And that just helps to remind me that even if I can't lift my body or my head, I can always lift my eyes and be able to look up. And it just helps to just keep things in perspective and know that and the great thing too is that I'm not in pain every single day, which is
Mhm.
great. So it's not a 24-hour 7 days a week situation, which I think if it was that, I would be in a different situation too, where I don't know if I could do it every single day. It's just too much. So I have about half, I would say half the month I'm in pain, half the month I'm not. And so I think on the days that I'm not in pain, I try to really make sure that I go outside in the sunshine, or I, visit with friends, or I call my family, or I just try to find ways to really make sure that I am surrounded by the things and the people that do bring joy into my life, so that
Mhm.
when I do have those days where I can't get out of bed and I'm watching movies all day because I can't quite, move, it just helps to keep that balance, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Hmm.
How does that parlay into what you do every day? I mean, because you've kind of said that, you've alluded to this the whole time of like the things that you've experienced, whether it's jobs or this situation,
Hmm.
has helped you become the person you need to be for this season right now.
Hmm.
How does what you're going through in your condition help you in your current role of helping leaders and helping care for people?
Yeah, I think kind of what I mentioned when it comes to empathy and sympathy, I can
Mm,
empathize with people so much more.
mm,
Um, having going through what I'm going through is I can empathize with people a lot. Where and you know you don't get that a lot when when you're trying to tell somebody you're struggling and they can't see what you're struggling with. That sympathy comes kind of checks in a little bit, and so I want to be a safe person for people, just like I have safe people that are there for me. So
mm.
if I'm safe and kind and give them space to feel cared for, then that makes me feel cared for as well. And I know you kind of mentioned the Enneagram, but I'm an 8, and
Mhm.
oftentimes with an 8, if you feel empowered, I feel empowered.
Mm.
And if you feel successful, I feel successful behind the
Huh.
scenes. And so I think that plays into it a lot, where when I can empathize with what you're going through, so you don't feel less alone, that makes me feel less alone. So that's I think that's where it's kind of weaved into where I'm at now. Because my role, you're in the sales side, I'm in the customer side. So
Mhm.
part of my role is when after they bring on leader for their organization, I'm then with them for the remainder of their contract to help train them or help encourage them or help give them new ideas, or just walk them through the process of caring for their community as well. And so you can't be in a customer role like that without, enjoying being around people.
Yeah.
You got to like people, right?
Totally. Totally.
To be in a customer facing role. And so I've met some of the coolest, most amazing people
Huh.
within our group of customers that I have, that it's been amazing. And there's even been a few customers where they've shared things with me and that are similar, and we're able to have those honest conversations. Whereas, I would say 6 years ago, there was maybe a handful of people that knew what I struggled with. And so just to even on my side feel open enough to share with other people and feel safe enough. And I think the other side of that too is that I'm in my 40s now, and they're so fun because I just
Huh.
don't really care as much about what people think. I just
Love
don't.
it. Love it.
In a good way. Like, I am who I am, and I know who I am, and I know what I bring to the table. And it's been so freeing. And I think that plays a lot of it too, where I feel more free to share what I'm going through because it's what I'm it's my truth, and it's what I have to do, deal with and every day, but it doesn't define who I am. I'm not just endometriosis. I have so many other things that play into my everyday. And so, yeah, that's probably how I think that's how I kind of stay positive, because I don't want other people to suffer either. And if I can be encouraging so you feel good, then that makes me feel good. And on we go, I think.
You're a great example of that. Like, you really do that. Like, just from me to you really do that. Like, you make people.
Thank you.
Even me, when I first started there, and like, you're one of the first people that I talked to in the kitchen. I don't know if you remember.
I do. I do.
I was just like, hey, and we've just. I was like, I feel like I've been your friend ever since, because you just immediately. I felt kind. I felt your kindness, and I felt like, hey, this lady like cares enough to like spend a few minutes talking to me. And I was like, I don't know anybody here, so I might as well talk to some people. And you were just so kind, and so you create that space. I think that's interesting. Like you said, as an 8, when other people feel like they're winning, or when other people are getting what they need as far as feeling cared for, then you feel like you get to be a part of that. And that the thought that comes to my mind right away is that statement of vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Have you heard that before? I'm sure you have.
I have. Yeah. That's Brene, right? Brene Brown.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. She's amazing.
And it's so true though. Like, there's so many people that whatever their struggle is, don't feel comfortable sharing, because they don't know if other people, they feel like the only one really is the thing.
Yeah.
And when we open up, and I think that's what we lack a lot in America specifically, is because there's like this pride and arrogance, or I don't know what all the right words are to put to it, but we all want to be prim and proper and put together and look good on the internet, and we don't want to tell people that we have any problems, because we don't want people to think badly of us. And it all comes back to like what you said of worrying about what other people think about you. And when we could shed that and be like, hey, this is me, these are my struggles, then other people are like, oh, well, cool. Yeah, I have some struggles too, and I feel comfortable sharing them. It's just that domino effect. So you're just to say that, I say all that to say, like, you're an encouragement, because you're what more people need to be like, of just being vulnerable and being open and saying, hey, I care enough about you that I want to share my story, so you can feel permission to share your story. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's been so freeing just to not only feel less alone, but to be able to encourage other people in their experience as well. Like you said at the beginning, we all have something that we're going through. We're not Instagram perfect. We never will be. I don't even want to be. But but to just remind people that they're not by themselves. And we all went through COVID in Seattle. It was pretty locked down for a really long time, and I was by myself in my apartment for months and months and months and months. I didn't get a hug for like 3 months. I mean, it was crazy just how isolated we were and how scary and fear driven it was. And so I don't ever want to be back there by choice. I don't want to be isolated by choice. And to have gone through that, like literally been isolated and alone, I don't want other people to feel that when they have an option to not be alone. So if sharing my story helps someone else to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one, then done and done. That's the value behind it. So it's been fun for me to be, because vulnerability was never my strong suit. I was always like, I gotta be the strong one. I gotta be the, have all my stuff together and not really show weakness, if you will. And I thought by me sharing I'm in pain was weak. So I just need to put on my smiling face and keep trucking through, and it's so not the case. I feel even stronger now with people kind of knowing what I'm going through than I did before when they didn't, and it's been really, really cool to experience that. And I might be in pain the rest of my life. I don't know. We don't have a lot of research to know, but I could be, but I can't let that be all that I am, and I can't give into that so much to where I'm just sitting in my chair in my dark apartment all day long, not talking to anybody like that. I can't let that happen either. So, it's been really encouraging to just hear people's stories and for me to feel free enough to share with what I'm going through too. And, it's been a really cool experience to have that.
It's wonderful. the thing that you've said many times throughout this, not the exact word, but the word I keep thinking of is community. Like you've found community in your friends, and like you said, people that you're able to, even in the pain, still be able to live life with and be encouraged by and share with. And the Facebook group and your they're just like this common theme I hear of like community, of like getting outside of isolation and finding people, whether it's finding people to share with, finding people to help, finding people that can help me. Like there's this common thing of community. And I think from my own experience living in isolation for several years, the worst thing you can do is not have community around you of people. And I get it though, because you're like, I gotta be strong, right? I can't let people know I'm doing fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Nothing to see here. But it's so damaging, and even, and it's so encouraging that you say that like I may live with that forever, but I now know that like there's a purpose, and that I have community and people in place, and that I will be able to share this, and it's going to make an impact, is really what you're saying. Community and impact are like those two things that I think of when we just talked right now. Like I heard community a lot, but also impact. Like, do you think about that ever? Like the impact that you've been able to make by being vulnerable? I know that's kind of like a similar question, but it's just, you know what I mean? Like, do you think about the impact that maybe, as much as, and I don't want to sound wrong, but as much as it's a really tough situation to be in, like the positive side is like you've been able to use it to impact people in a major way. Do you ever think about that?
So kind. I honestly try not to, only in the regard of, I don't want to get so big for my britches that I'm so amazing, right? I don't want it to ever get like that. I want to still be, humble in who I am and what I'm here to do. And so I don't think I think about it in that way, because I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm a rock star and, things like that. But I do love hearing, I think maybe to answer your question, I do love hearing back when I have done it, if that makes sense. So I don't think I think of like an impact of all of these people. However, when I do get feedback from like a person at a time, that's really probably the most impactful for me. So, often even now I'll still get like text messages or social media messages from people I taught 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they'll send me a little note and say, oh my gosh, thanks to you, I'm doing this, or, little things like that is super encouraging. Or when I do have conversations about my illness to somebody else that has something similar, and they, say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not the only one. So I think impact in that way, in little kind of bite-sized pieces, is probably more my speed. And if I'm able to impact more people, that's incredible too. But I also don't want to think, oh my gosh, I'm so incredible. I don't want to ever be that way.
Sure. And you're not. You don't come across like that ever.
Oh, thank you. Because I think that would, if I got that way, it would end people feeling safe to talk with me, or feel safe to feel like I'm going to be real with them. And so I think about it a little more in bite-sized pieces, but it is cool to hear from people when they say things like, hey, I'm not alone anymore, or you saw me see something in this way, has been really, really cool. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Totally.
Okay.
No, thanks for that. And again, from me to you, like we're gonna wrap up here in a second, but from me to you, like you've impacted me probably more than you know. Just going back to like what I said of like, you were a person that, like, again, when I was coming into leader, I was going through a lot of things of like getting back into business, struggling with my identity, what are people going to think of me. I feel, just I'm coming in at an entry level. Like there was just so many things I was thinking, and to just have somebody immediately be kind and be a friend to me. Like I felt, and I feel this every time I talk to you, and so maybe you should hear it. I feel this peace every time I talk to you. And I since I met you, like I've gravitated towards you because there's a kindness and a peace that you exude, and I don't know if I could fully explain it. But thank you for it. Like it's been super impactful. Like it really has. Like you, I feel like I've known you like my whole life, which is I know that's a weird thing to say. And
no,
so
I feel the same way. No, I feel the same way. And what's so amazing about you, Kyle, is that I feel the same way about you. Like every time we chat, every time I see you in the hallway, you are nothing but kind to those around you. And knowing a little bit of your story and listening to what you've shared on your podcast, it's been so incredible to see even how far you've come in the short time that I've known you. And you just have such a way of making people feel seen and heard and just feel such kindness from you that it's been really, really fun to get to know you. And I feel the same way. I feel like we've been buddies forever. And Chester loves you, which he's the ultimate say, but but to just be able to have you as a friend has been so impactful. And if, yeah, of course, everyone around you it feels the same way. So thank you for what you said. That's very kind, and that goes double for me. So
of course. Well, thanks, Robyn. This was really good. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and thanks for sharing and being vulnerable. I think if there's any win that comes out of this, it's that just somebody hears it and feels like the permission to be vulnerable with somebody else. I think that's the biggest win, right? As you said, bite-sized pieces. It's not that we change the world, with our 45, 50-minute talk, but it's just that somebody hears it and feels encouraged to be able to be like, hey, I can share my story too, because Robyn shared her story. So
absolutely. Find a safe person. Yeah, absolutely. Find your person to share, for sure.
I guess my last question, as you say that, like, what's your advice to people that are struggling? Because you were about to go into it, so I'm going to ask it. What is your advice for somebody that's like, I don't know what to do, or they feel that I don't want to make people feel weird or uncomfortable. I just got to be strong. All those things. What's your advice to that person?
Yeah. So find one person. If that's where you're going to start, find one person that you feel safe to share your story. And if you don't have anybody in your life that feels safe, then we need to find somebody with you. So find somebody that's safe, or find a Facebook group, or find there's those like meetup groups, or there's so many ways of connecting with people these days that I would recommend that, or even finding somebody on Instagram that has shared their story publicly and reach out to them that way. And you're not always going to strike gold on the first reach out, and that's okay. But if you keep putting yourself out there, there are people out there that can relate with you and care for you well, and can kind of pour into your life in a really amazing way. And so don't stop trying to find your people and your community. It's so important. And I think if I hadn't have found that Facebook group, honestly, I'd be in a totally different spot right now, because I probably wouldn't have gotten that surgery. Even though it was a lot and it was big, and my pain is still back. I'm still glad I did it, because there are some aspects of my illness that were resolved because of that. So I'm glad I did it. But find community. Absolutely.
That's really good.
Yep.
Well, cool. Thanks, Robyn. This was incredible. You're amazing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. This was so fun.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Well, Chester, adios, my friend. If you can hear me.
He's asleep next to me. I was going to pull. You want me to put him on? Come here, bud.
Come on, Chester.
Get me on
Folks, this is again, I'll say it again. Chester is the best office dog in the world. There's just no debating it. Look at this man. If you're watching, look at this man. And if you're listening, which most of you are listening, so you can't see him, but he's incredible. That maybe if you're listening, you should go watch, because man, I don't promote the YouTube at all, so someone needs to watch it. There's like 10 views on there. Chester, you're the best.
He is the best.
Well, thanks, Robyn. You guys are amazing. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Kyle. You too. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Inside the Mirror. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be blessed. We'll see you then. Bye, Robyn.
Bye.